It is 11:01 right now here in Hawaii. So out of respect of chancellors as well as your guys' time, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, I'm Michael, and I'd like to thank you all for coming to this Chancellor Brown Bag via Zoom. So today we're just going to have a little question and answer period with Chancellor Bonnie Irwin, and she is open to questions right now. So please, if you have any questions right now, please alert us via chat, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Hi, Michael. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Wanda.
Good morning, Chancellor Bonnie. My question is regarding the Teacher in Excellence Award. I had submitted my recommendation, and I was just wondering when the results will be announced.
Very soon. We're trying to figure out how we announce and how we do a virtual ceremony or invite everybody to more of a ceremony in the fall. So we're trying to work out some of those details right now, but we have all the nominations and hope to be making an announcement pretty soon, the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you so much.
He has a question about the pass-fail status of classes that will be announced. Do you have any updates on that, Chancellor Irwin?
We are still finalizing some details, but I expect it to be out, I'm hoping by tomorrow. With Good Friday holiday, I was going to say end of week, but I'm hoping for tomorrow. What we're looking at is probably going to be professors will go ahead and give everyone a grade, and then after a student sees their grade at the end of the term, they could opt for a credit instead of a grade, or no credit, as the case may be. We're trying to work out some issues about prerequisites, about how this, making sure we protect any student who's on probation, and some of those details. We wanted to get like all the logistics worked out so that once the announcement goes out and students start contacting their advisors, the advisors will be armed with the information to help them. So we're very close, just ironing out the last details at this point.
From Sarah Norbaum. What are the chances that fall 2020 classes will be held online?
You know, it's anybody's guess right now. We're hopeful that we'll be back face-to-face, but we don't know yet. Our agreement with the faculty union is that we will make a decision for the second summer session no later than May 15th. And we're kind of thinking about that same date for fall, but because this situation changes almost daily, it's really difficult. Right now, I'm hopeful that we'll be back in regular business in the fall. But you know, if I were a betting person, I'm not sure where I'd put my money right now. Our goal is always to get you as much information as soon as we can.
In the event, because we're being asked not to travel, especially back to you know, another island, and we're dorm residents, do you think that housing will be extended for those that cannot travel?
You know, we have not answered that question yet, because there actually is not a moratorium on travel. You can travel. It's just that once you do, you have to quarantine yourself on the other side for 14 days. So because they haven't actually stopped travel, I don't think we'd be extending, but I will certainly talk to Vice Chancellor Gomes about that possibility to see, you know, whether they're talking about it in housing yet.
Okay, thank you so much.
There will also be a communication coming out soon. We've done one on housing. We're looking into some other options with housing so that we can push back the checkout date a little later. One of the keys for that was to make a decision about whether we were going to be canceling some summer activities that usually use the residence halls. And it looks like most, if not all of those, are going to be canceled, which gives us more flexibility for early summer.
Great, thank you so much.
I would love to know how online classes are going, how you feel about it, how everyone's handling that. So if anyone wants to answer that question, if you don't have questions of your own, I'd love to hear it, or you can just send me an email. I'd be really interested.
Yeah, I have actually three hands-on classes. I'm in art. So doing e-learning is quite difficult with the different processes. We've had to improvise because we're not able to use the equipment at the studios. So it's been a very challenging process, quite difficult. You have to be very flexible and not getting instruction, you know, like face-to-face instruction when you're trying to learn a technique or you're trying to learn a process or complete an assignment is quite difficult. The plus side of being online learning is I don't really like to take tests and exams. I'm one of those nervous Nellies, but taking an online exam when the instructor has had to put it in the form of an essay was more conducive to the way I learn. So I really appreciate that. Was a real plus. And we have some of the professors in some of the courses. I'm taking 5 courses this semester, have been very supportive by sending us, you know, constant Laulima updates and revisions and so on and so forth, because they too are stumbling into some of the obstacles that were not foreseen when they, you know, set out their Laulima assignment. So yeah, it's been a learning experience. And I think what you have to do is stay open-minded that we're still able to do this. And you can't be so comfortable in your life that you can only have it done a certain way or you can't function. So it's been an experience, especially for me at my age and with the technology, learning, you know, like as you're standing there, it's like on the job, you're learning it. So it's been okay. It's been a challenge.
I like your attitude though about the philosophy of having to be flexible and learn as we go.
Yeah. Everything is shutting down, or the resources are minimal, but I appreciate whatever's open here on campus, because that's the reason why I'm a transfer student. So I have not returned to Oahu, and I chose to come to Hilo because at this point in time in my life, I didn't think I could handle the life up at UH Manoa. And so I came here. And this has been an eye-opening event because the campus is smaller, the size of the classes are smaller. There's been an inconvenience as far as having to commute back and forth to HCC. And my other concern is about having to take a class because our schedule of our classes are not conducive for art students, and having to take a class there and not being eligible to be considered for the dean's list because I had to take the class there, because it is the same class. And that's the kind of stuff that I think admin needs to look into.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just a side note, Wanda, on that, USA just passed a resolution on that, and they'll be going to the Chancellor's desk very soon, requesting for the Chancellor's assistance in moving forward with that. So for those who are unaware, it's just an institutional credit transfer policy. Be on the lookout for more info on that coming soon. Well, if I may, currently all my classes are online. I am taking, let's see, 6 classes right now. So a total of 19 credits because one's a language course. And for me, coming from the social sciences and humanities kind of studies, it's been a little rough because a lot of my classes have been very much discussion based and in-class discussions. So for philosophy as well as like leadership and ethics courses, it's been quite the doozy. But nonetheless, well, my classmates and I have been taking it fairly well. And we're doing our best through Zoom meetings and Google Hangouts to just try and get things done. Thank you for joining us, Farah.
Are any of the faculty using like discussion boards so you can have, you know, what we call an asynchronous conversation? So, you know, somebody posts something and somebody else responds maybe a couple hours later. It's not the same kind of conversation, but it's still a discussion of sorts.
In our art classes, we're using the Google Hangouts, and we post our art to the discussion board, and we're able to put in comments. So it's been helping us move along. Great. Thank you.
And yeah, likewise for me, it's a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous. A good bunch of my philosophy as well as political science classes have moved to asynchronous so we can get more thought out discussion posts. But for some of my language courses, synchronous has been what's been normal.
Okay.
Am I the only faculty member on the board here?
You might be. This is a student brown bag, so you're probably the
I wasn't even sure if I was invited, so I just crashed the party.
That's okay.
Great.
Well,
We are going to do one for faculty in a couple of weeks, but
I've I've always been one to prefer the face-to-face. So this has been a real new experience for me. But I got to be honest, I kind of enjoy the online experience. And what I find, at least from what students have told me, is that aside from the fact that there's no kind of physical presence, in other words, I'm not physically present to them, they haven't seen a whole lot of difference between the way I used to teach the class face-to-face and the way I do it through Zoom. It's the same format. If anything, what students have said is that they need to have the discipline to come online. When they had classes scheduled on campus, they were on campus. And so going to class was just part of the routine. Now, when they're at home and they have a lot of different things going on, they have to remind themselves, oh, we have a class at 11 o'clock, because they're not on campus. I think that's part of the new normal, is that students, I find students who come into class 10, 15, 20 minutes afterwards and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I was doing something and I forgot. And so, we all have to be kind of understanding of that it's a new normal. But I, for one, have not found a real big drop-off. I even thought we did a lab assignment on statistics last Thursday, and I was really apprehending that, because with statistics, you got to almost be able to look students in the eyes and see if they're grasping it or not. So what I said, look, I can't look you in the eyes. I can't read your nonverbals. So you need to help me out. If there's a question, if you're not sure about what we're doing, if you don't understand something, you need to just interrupt. Just stop me. At the beginning, students said it was difficult, because the norm is not to interrupt the professor. But as we went along, people said, oh, wait. Where did you get that number from? Or how did you get that number? And, and so we proceeded. It wasn't as chaotic as I was afraid it was going to be. So, I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference to me between face-to-face and online.
yeah,
It's a matter of preference, I think, right now at this point.
It's interesting on the attendance front, because I've heard in some cases students are better about attendance, maybe because there's not as much to do than go to class. But you're right, at home we have more distractions. I mean, I find those days that I'm working at home rather than in the office, there are many more things that can distract me. I'm also always interested in the use of discussion boards and that asynchronous, because sometimes the students who are a little shyer in class don't mind typing something where they might not open their mouth and say it in a classroom. So it's going to be, I think, at the end of this semester, really interesting for faculty to sit back and reflect about what went well, what just doesn't translate as well. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm encouraging all my students to, and I'm also giving them extra credit for completing the student evaluations, because I am really interested to see what their reaction is to, this sudden move from face-to-face to online. And, I'm asking them to pay particular attention to the question of what it is that I can do better. What can be done to make the experience better? And so hopefully I get, sufficient responses from students where I can, think through and make adjustments, because I, for one, believe that it's quite possible that the fall semester at least may start off online. And I need to be prepared for that. If we can encourage our students to complete the online evaluations and to provide us with feedback, I think that can help a lot of us to make the experience better. So I'm just going to give you extra credit points, and just remember that God sees all. So whether you do it or not, I'm not going to check, but God's looking. So, make sure you earn your extra credit points. And I'm convinced that most students are going to take the time to do the evals.
And we can send messaging out to students and really encouraging them to do that particularly thoughtfully this semester, because we want to learn from this experience. And I think that would be good.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Chancellor Bonnie, if you could address maybe a registration for summer classes, if there's any update on it, and how hopeful are you? It looks as if, what I'm looking at, it looks as if people are registering, so I was just wondering if you had could shed something on that.
Yeah. I mean, registration goes on as scheduled. As you know, the classes that are offered for summer are all online so far. But we are anticipating students to get out there and start registering. I know Vice Chancellor Gomes is in the house. I don't know if she has anything to add to that.
Well, we did open registration. What is today? Today's Wednesday, so on Monday, and we have not been pushing registration as hard as we have in the past, just because we don't want students to feel pressured by that. But we have sent an announcement that said registration is open. When you just started asking the question, I quickly opened the browser and looked through the offerings to make sure they were all changed to the online format, and also to briefly take a look at whether or not students have been registering in. And there are some classes that actually have upward of 10 students already registered into them. So I think these are probably students who have been waiting, were already watching what was posted on the schedule and want to make sure that they have the class they need. So registration is already open. We haven't heard of any glitches. In the past, we've had them, none so far, knock on wood. We also know that we are monitoring summer session 2. And if we have the opportunity to add face-to-face classes, we will make an announcement about that. But right now, it's still too early for us to tell.
What permanent changes do you see at UH Hilo after this pandemic, Chancellor Irwin?
You know, it's a really interesting question. I just did an interview with Sherry Bracken from Hawaii Public Radio that she asked me that same question. How will we be different when even if we're, open to face-to-face classes again? And that's really hard for me to judge at this moment. But I think as people, we're going to be different. And what I mean by that is, if we get through this semester and people feel proud of what they've accomplished, given all the challenges, I think we're going to be more resilient, even than we usually are as a community, that we know we can handle it. When people at other campuses in UH and other institutions across the country have been, really worrying about, I don't know how we're going to handle this. I don't know, what my campus is going to do. I thought about the fact that UH Hilo has been through hurricanes, we've been through lava. We've got those kind of tools. And so this is a different kind of a challenge, but I think it's one that I'm hoping people can be proud of what they've accomplished on the other side. And that in turn, I think might make us more confident as an institution in terms of how we might change in the future. So, and what I mean by that is, there's a lot of opportunities out there that UH Hilo hasn't seized upon yet. We've been talking about how we better serve the entire Hawaii Island, for example. And some of that's going to be dependent on some online learning, because we can't, expect a student from Kona to drive over to campus multiple times a week. We can't necessarily expect faculty to drive all the way over to Palamanui multiple times a week. So how can we be flexible? And this is giving us kind of a surprise exercise, pilot test, and how these things work. And so I think that might change a little bit. We might have some more online offerings. Some of the faculty might feel kind of comfortable in this environment. It's like, you know what, I can actually do this and it's working. So that's one. And then I think we can also really think about, one of the things that this institution is known for, UH Hilo, is the personal touch we bring to education. Trying to kind of rethink how you do hands-on learning in different ways. And so I think that's going to be something too. The other thing is thinking about the opportunities we have to contribute to the rehabilitation, if you will, of Hilo and this island. We're going to see people challenged in all kinds of ways with the economy. Some of our small businesses may close. We're going to need to be thinking about where new jobs can be created. And I think the university has a role to play in that. I can't tell you today exactly what that is, but I think we have some real opportunities there. You know, I wrote my my blog this month on the meaning of the word essential, and we talk about that a lot. And in these times, it's like, who's essential? What operations are essential? And I think this has kind of given us some time to think about the importance of everybody in the community and how we all play a role. So at my interview, if you're interested in listening at HBR, will be on the 19th of April. I was pretty sure that was the case. So anyway, those are just a few things. I mean, the specifics, there's so many unknowns right now. So, you know, I also wonder, and this is just Chancellor being very philosophical at this moment, whether we come out from the other end more interested in our physical health and well-being. We're all getting into this habit of like really washing our hands and being careful. Will that make us a healthier community in the long run?
So just moving forward, we have two questions kind of pertaining to the library right now, more or less announcements to students right now. As the library is one of those facilities on campus that is still in use, we do have materials materials available with the library. As Veronica points out, there are laptops out for rental or borrowing for students. And Morgan has asked other students who are here in this chat right now if there's anything more that the library could provide. Also, Chancellor, if you have any ideas on what the library could be doing or how you feel the library has served the student body during this time of need, you could also expand on that.
Well, one of the first things as we were, even before we made the final decision of when we were going to go online, but when this first started, the first thing we started talking about is we have so many students who either don't have the technology, they don't have the Wi-Fi at home. How are we going to serve those students? And so we ordered a bunch of laptops, contacted Dell and just ordered a whole bunch of laptops. And we got a shipment of some of those this week, which is why the library sent out that notification. You know, we want to maintain the social distancing, and I've seen people doing that pretty well on the library lanai and in the library itself, but people still need a place to be sometimes. Those of you who are living in the residence halls, you know, need to get out of your room every once in a while and move around, right? And so even if you're just going from the residence hall to the library, it's at least something. But the main thing we were trying to do is make sure everyone had access to computers and Wi-Fi resources.
That's our main focus right now, and all the reference librarians are available online or by phone. I'm the circulation manager right now, so if you have any ideas about what we can do better to serve you, please let me know.
Yeah, I went into the library on Friday, I guess, just to see how things were going and talked to a couple people at the circulation desk, and really happy that our library staff is on point providing that support right now.
There we go.
I'd like to commend the library staff and the fact that Chancellor Bonnie them had foresight to do this, because they've extended the deadlines on borrowing books, and they still are there. You know, you can go in there and you can still access. I think yesterday Morgan and I talked about, I'm doing research for my term paper, and you're not able to access a lot of the stuff, but at least, you know, there is some place that you can go to still try and get your term paper completed. So yeah, it's been wonderful having the library open.
I also have a couple questions for the Chancellor as well. So if no one really has anything, I can go ahead and read off of my list as well.
Go for it, Michael.
Okay, so we are coming to a close end as your first year here at UH Hilo. So I have a few questions just to you. Just a few things. So my first question is, in your first year as Chancellor at UH Hilo, from what interactions from students have you gained a better knowledge of Hilo, or just in this role? What kind of things have you learned?
Well, I think the area in which I learned a lot from interacting with our students was around the Mauna Kea controversy, right? Students were very forthcoming with their beliefs on all sides of the TMT and the Mauna, and so that was really, really important. also learned that we have a core of students who are very active on issues of social justice. I would say the majority probably are not in my experience, but we do have some students who are really out there and active and engaged. And I'm hoping that that is something we can build on as we move forward. I've learned from students the various challenges that they face, but also it's been great to hear about their accomplishments. One of the meetings I will always remember is meeting with students from the Sustainability Committee who have been leading the compost project on campus. And those students were just so enthusiastic about that project. And seeing people excited about something like compost, was great. And Hilo, even though we're small, we've got a lot of people who are passionate about what they're studying or what they're doing for kind of co-curricular activities, which has been great to see. I haven't been engaged quite as much with our students out in the community, but I know we have a lot of students who are going and doing things out in community as well. So it's, I've learned a little bit about just the students overall, but then a lot about some individual students. One of the things I got to do because of COVID, frankly, is my calendar is a little more open in some spots because I don't have any public events that I have to go to and things like that. So I went to my first thesis defense via Zoom. And I'm hoping to catch a couple more before the end of the semester because the grad students were a group that I hadn't had a whole lot of contact with. And it was really interesting to hear the student and what she had learned and see the faculty asking those really probing questions. It was just a good experience.
Just kind of looking back at the grad students, as well as a couple of our students who have kind of like lost their travel opportunities during this COVID-19 outbreak, is administration kind of taking a look into what ways we can support the academic careers of some of our students who maybe this was their final year to do some of those things?
We haven't really done, at least at my level, a deep dive into that, but I know faculty and deans are thinking about these things. One thing I would say to the students by way of reassurance is that you're not alone. So, everybody who's, wanting to graduate this semester or this is their last semester in grad programs, everybody's sort of going through this pause. I have a good friend who works for the Council on Graduate Schools. And one of the things I asked him, for example, I said, okay, if we go all credit, no credit, and this was when we were thinking about just completely doing credit, no grades at all. I said, what impact would that have on students at UH Hilo that want to apply to grad school? And he was sharing with me the kinds of conversations that people are having across the country. Now we've pulled back and that's not the way we're going to do this, but it was good to get that perspective so that I could go back and reassure the departments and then they could reassure the students that we are really trying to keep their best interests in mind and give them as high a quality of experience as we can under the circumstances. Now, for some of those grad students, they may opt to, extend a project. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what our policies are around that, but I think if their project depends on field research, then maybe they're going to be doing some extending of their projects. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we're also assessing the research enterprise here on campus. And some of the research projects are ongoing, regardless of COVID. And we're just making sure that everyone's keeping their social distance, they're cleaning the equipment if multiple people are using the equipment and that kind of thing to stay safe. But we were given the opportunity by the governor to keep research functions going if they were deemed critical. And Vice Chancellor Hahn had a whole protocol for us to assess which of those projects are critical and which ones can be delayed. Just like when we do this face to face, some people come just to listen, I think.
Right. Okay, so in that case, I'll just keep on moving forward. So just more questions kind of to round off the end of your first year. How has living in Hawaii and Hilo kind of changed your outlook on life, or maybe even your style of leadership?
I have I was always a very patient person, certainly in my leadership role. I have a good friend who says I have the longest fuse of anyone she knows. I rarely lose my temper. But I have learned a different kind of patience. I'm a little bit more patient with myself, partly because there's just been so much going on this year. Coming into this university at this point in time has been a really interesting exercise. But I think living in Hawaii makes that easier, makes it easier for me to kind of step back and reflect a little bit more. I read a book on managing with aloha, and I subsequently gave a presentation to a professional meeting in January about leading with aloha and this idea of really listening to people, and also giving ourselves the grace to, particularly in a period like now, of admitting that we're going to make some mistakes along the way. But even more than that, it's just it's hard for me to articulate, but instead of getting frustrated if something is not going the way I want, I step back and say, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I be a better person and a better chancellor because I'm experiencing this thing, whatever it is? And that has really helped me to maintain perspective, and also to try to support my team. As most of you know, over spring break, I had to travel to California. I had to do something with my mother, and she's fine. But when I came back, even though it was before the governor's order, I put myself in self-quarantine. And what that meant was the three vice chancellors, I was in touch with everybody daily, but the three vice chancellors all stepped up and kept this place going in really important ways. And we had to make a lot of decisions really quickly. And you learn about that in leadership books, like how to be nimble and how to lead through a crisis. But until you actually experience one, you realize all the things you don't know. But I had so much confidence in my team that also helped too. And it was a great leadership learning experience for me, and I hope for them as well. So yeah, it's been an interesting an interesting year. The environment has got me thinking more about my own health as well, and how I can stay a little bit more active. And even in California, people are pretty active and they eat pretty well. But I'm trying to avoid the mac salad, even though it's one of my favorite things to eat, and eat more of the fruits and vegetables, that kind of thing. But that all for me is a function of living here and the model that is set by so many people around me.
So just a question in response to COVID-19, bring it back to something that we're facing right now. A lot of facilities on campus, because we have student employees who are returning home, as well as some staff members who are working from home. Some of the things that we are seeing is just general maintenance of these facilities, cleaning, sanitizing down, and it's apparent in some locations that these places may be a little understaffed, or they're facing some issues. And I know right now there's a hiring pause. Could you just please expand a little more on how administration is working to just ensure the safety of the campus, as well as these areas on campus that do need some help during this time?
So we're doing a number of things. For some of our cleaning, maintenance crew, we're having them on rotating shifts, because we don't need as many people on staff at every single moment on campus. Because if we're not using buildings, then the bathrooms don't need to be cleaned every day, right? So it's been a balance between figuring out what we need and keeping people engaged, because our first goal is support for students, particularly since we still have students in residence. I mean, we're supporting everybody in the online environment, but as long as we have students living in the hall and living locally and using our facilities, then we need to maintain the ones that get high use. And so we can redeploy some of the custodial staff to spend more time on, say, the library than they would normally, and less time on, say, UCB, where you just have a few people using their offices, but the classrooms are closed down. We're also using this as an opportunity to do some deep cleaning of different areas. So I saw people on Friday doing the power washing of the sidewalks. There are things that we sometimes don't do till summer that we can start doing now just because there's fewer people on campus. The second thing, though, is to, so the first thing, what is the support we need for students and to keep the campus operational? So, you know, the payroll office, the mail room have to keep working, right? Because otherwise, lots of people depend on them. But then the other thing is the health and safety of all of our employees. And that's why you'll see me, for example, on social media, a lot of people have used the, you know, hashtag stay home, save lives. And I purposely didn't, because we have people who can't stay home, who have to come into work. But we want most people to stay home if they can. And so the other challenge we've had, but I think we're handling it really well, is coming up with projects for people to do at home. So my secretary, for example, comes into the office a couple days a week, and then she's home a couple days. And so what can she be working on when she's not at her desk? Same thing with student employees, trying to figure out if they are still here, how can we keep them employed? Because we know people depend on that income. So, and these conversations are going on across the UH system. Every unit's doing it a little bit differently. So far, we've only had to make, I believe it is, one emergency hire for the campus. But other than that, yeah, we are in a pause. So there's going to be more messaging coming out from President Lasner probably today on those kinds of things. But at the same time, the work of the university goes on. And it's not just the people that you see, you know, buildings and grounds, you know, maintenance people and things like that, but it's also all the people working behind the scenes. So you might have an office where the doors closed, but there's still people in that building working. I would say, though, from the nature of your question, it sounds like there are concerns that some areas maybe aren't getting the attention they need. And those need to be reported to somebody, to me, a vice chancellor. You know, people can call this office, they can email me, and then we can make sure that we're deploying people where they need to be. The system officers have a phone call every morning at 7:30. And this is the kind of stuff we talk about across the system, because the other really important thing in a time like this is we're trying to be consistent. So for, you know, students like Wanda, who spends part of her time down at Hawaii Community College and part of her time up here at UH Hilo, we want to make sure that the campuses are doing things more or less the same way, so that students don't get in a bind because they heard one set of guidance from one place and another set another place.
So we do have a student who joined a little later. Could you just please once again readdress the pass-fail system that may be coming into effect soon?
So we're hoping to get messaging out this week or very first thing next week. It looks like what we're moving toward is professors will give grades in classes, but we've added a credit. We're going to add a credit, no credit option for every class, so that a student can opt to do a credit, no credit, rather than a grade. And they will have that option after they see their grades. We thought it was important to do that. We're just trying to reduce the level of anxiety that some students might be feeling in this online environment, particularly those of you who've not taken online classes before. We're trying to work out some details. There's details about prerequisites. There's details about, usually a credit means C or better, but what if a student gets a C- or D? What's in their best interest? So we want to get all the details right, so advisors and faculty have the information, and so that students have the information, because we're going to give you a choice and we want to make sure you make an informed choice, that so you know what the various things are. Other things that we anticipate this semester not counting toward the cap in the number of classes you can take, credit, no credit. Probably going to be the case. The other thing that we have to look into, which is delaying the notification a little bit, is a couple of our programs that are accredited. Things like nursing and teaching, where grades may be required. We want to work out some of those issues before we go forward with a blanket announcement. But as I said, we're really close. I'm hoping that it's still going to come out tomorrow.
And just sort of to wrap things up, Chancellor, if there's a message you'd like to get out to the community or the students, what would that be right now?
I think, you know, the most important things for me, stay safe, but stay positive. I think it was Randy who used the term in this conversation, new normal. We don't know what that is yet, but we just have to be flexible and be as calm as possible and be positive. Think about how this challenge is strengthening us. And if you need help, reach out to somebody. If you're struggling in a class, reach out to your faculty member. If there's a student support service you need, just as if you were, you know, on campus, walking over to campus and walking into an office, their phones are live, they've got their email and websites up and running. And I think it's really important in a time like this that we don't isolate ourselves and let ourselves get down about this, that we stay connected, we continue to operate with that aloha spirit that UH Hilo is known for. And that goes both ways. I mean, I think faculty and staff have to have that attitude, but students do too. I've been really appreciative with how well our community has been adapting.
Alrighty. Once again, thank you for your time, Chancellor.